Welcome to the Kickstart My Franchise podcast. I'm your host, Tim Michaels. Today, I'm excited to welcome Kyle Chiasson, a longtime franchisee of a brand called Best Option Restoration, who is now the brand president. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks, Tim, for having me.
Well, let's get into this. So, how long have you been in franchising and why did you decide to get into it to begin with?
So I have been in franchising since 2017. I was in banking prior to that. Had the opportunity to meet our founder, Nick Anthony Zamison, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it wasn't where I was at, and I really wanted to die on my own sword and be in business for myself. Got introduced to Nick. He was just starting Best Option Restoration and said, "Hey, why don't you come be our first franchise?" And I said, yes. I quit my job and I moved back to Colorado to open my location. And here I am. So over
Wow.
the, yeah,
So, you were
um,
franchisee number one.
correct. Yeah. Franchisee number one.
That's impressive. So what made you, confident to take that risk? I think most people I talk to, they don't really want to consider a brand until it's got like 10 or 20 franchisees.
Yeah. For me, it was much more about the who than the what. It transparently, it could have been just about any concept, and I believed in Nick, who was building the brand out. He had done it before. This was his fourth franchise brand, and so I think I saw the social proof that people are often looking for in franchising through that. And I was willing to take the risk, and oftentimes uh, the real risk is the one you're not taking.
Well said. So you're a pretty young guy, you must have been pretty young when you got into this. Like, can you talk about what that was like, as a younger person starting a business? What were some of the challenges or, advantages of doing that?
Yeah, I think when you start younger, I started when I was 23. Transparently, didn't have a lot to lose. I didn't have a family, wasn't married at the time. It was relatively risk-free the way that I thought that I looked at it. And so the big thing for me though was just taking the step. Now what I was up against is I didn't have a network. I didn't know a lot about business at all. Um, big part of my thanks to Best Option Restoration and teaching me the business world. But I was willing to take the next step and figure it out, and leaned in on the franchise group to help me with that. And that's really how I overcome being young. One thing that I was taught pretty quick out of the gate is we can fix activity, but you cannot fix inactivity.
Mm,
So indecision was going to get me nowhere.
mhm. Yeah, that's super interesting. And what was sort of the day to day, like what did that look like initially? And did it evolve at all over time? As I assume your team maybe grew a little bit.
Yeah, scaled out a team nicely over the 8 years that I was a franchisee. When I first got started, I wore all the hats. I did absolutely everything. Didn't have a team. Hired some part-time help within the first few months, and then in I don't know, about 6 months to a year, I started bringing on full-time staff. And every year that went by, I was always looking at how do I take one of the hats off that I'm wearing to help scale this thing out, to where eventually at the end I was much more in a passive role than active role when it was all said and done. And I had a full reconstruction team, full mitigation team, office coordinator and managers in the divisions.
That's fantastic. And would you say, how would you compare the level of success that you achieved relative to like what your goal was starting off? Like, do you feel like you reached sort of what you were hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, I think I certainly did, and it was all part of a bigger picture to build, the best option brand as a whole. And early on, it was very much about me, but pretty quickly it evolved into, hey, here's a bigger picture here. How do I help the entire system and the brand, and work up into the position that I'm at today? And so I'm not there yet by any means. Have a long ways to go. There's a lot of work to do, but I'm actively executing on that plan. And as a franchisee, very much I achieved the success that I was looking for.
It's awesome. So now you're the brand president. So it does seem like you've had, a decent amount of success here. So congrats on that. Um,
Thank you.
as far as like the restoration space in general, like why should people consider the restoration space?
Overall, the restoration space falls under the umbrella of home services, which is a growing industry. But restoration specifically is just about as recession proof as you can get. About 80% of the work that we do is funnels through insurance carriers, and insurance policies that clients have. In addition, something that I've been paying a much more attention to lately is this kind of AI. AI is such a buzzword right now, and we're very much enhanced by AI. You could interpret that as we're technology proof or AI proof, but I would like to look at it more of, well, we actually leverage technology and AI to help do our jobs better, but it's not replacing anything that we do. And
Hmm,
those, I think, are two big leading factors in, the industry. Kind of narrowing it down to the industry, it's $250 billion industry and growing. So there's more work out there than there are people doing it.
interesting. So when you start off, you're a new franchisee, nobody really knows who you are. What are the key things that you do to sort of generate those initial leads or business? Is it mainly coming from like Google, or are you networking with particular groups?
Yeah, there's a combo, and we look at marketing and we kind of put it in buckets, or we look at it. I'm not a good fisher at all, but we look at it like fishing, in that I don't care where you catch the fish from. I just want you to catch the fish. So we'll be in oceans and streams and rivers and ponds looking for fish, aka looking for sales. And how we do that, and I'll summarize it into these three primary buckets, is number one, out of the gate, brand new franchise, no network, doesn't have much of a brand presence in their specific area. We're looking at paid lead generation services, and it's a little more than just Google advertising. That's not quite what it is. I mean, there's a token of that in the strategy, but it's more of specific lead gen channels that are made for restoration. And because they're pay to play, they don't care about how long you've been around, what your reputation is. All they care about is, are you paying for, are you paying for the lead essentially?
Mm,
And it's nice. They're relatively risk free, because if it's not a qualified lead, the franchisee wouldn't pay for them, which is fantastic for them. And that's one of the buckets. Second bucket is we have a couple of national vendor agreements where franchisees can sign up for certain vendor programs and generate business by being a part of the Best Option Restoration group. And then third, and this is what takes time, but it's the most important piece of a scalable, sustainable uh, franchisee, is the organic marketing approach. So we tell them who to see, when to see them, what to say, have cadences built out for different types of contacts. But that, as you know, relationship building takes time. But that's really the key. You can be very successful in bucket one and two that I laid out, but the third is really the big boost that you get, and this is the one that gets them where they want to be in 3, 4, or 5 years.
hmm. And who are like those key people to establish those relationships with?
Yeah, we target in those relationships. I call them the A list, but there's three A list targets for us: property management, insurance agents, and plumbing outfits.
Mm. Is there a particular way that like this process typically works? Like, is it okay? I get water damage, then I contact my insurance agent, and then because I have that relationship with the insurance agent, they then recommend me, or how does it typically work?
Yeah, so that great question. The marketing side of the business is B2B, but the work is primarily B2C. We do have market share in the commercial space, and we're actually working on grabbing more of that. But in general, you go to the insurance agent. So I won't use you because I don't want to wish this upon you, but a good friend of yours, knock on wood,
I
wakes
just
up from.
refinished my basement, so I can't
Yeah,
have any.
yeah, yeah. No, it's not going to be you. Not going to be you. Uh, Good friend, knock on wood, refinishes their basement, and they maybe they don't go in their basement often, but hey, they had a big freezing event. It was cold for 3, 4 days, and they saw a post from Best Option Restoration that says, make sure you check your basements to see if you had any water intrusions or frozen pipes. and they go downstairs, and sure enough, they have water. Uh, a large majority of people in that situation are going to go to their insurance agent and say, "Hey, I have a water damage. What do I do?" Well, because Best Option Restoration has built a relationship with that insurance agent, they're saying, "Hey, client, I'm going to have Bor call you, or here's their number. Go ahead and give them a call. They can get out there within an hour."
Mm,
Very, very common. Sometimes they'll call the plumber, and then the plumber who knows us recommends us. Other times they're a tenant in that situation, and so their property manager would then recommend us.
got it. Got it. Okay. And in terms of best option restoration specifically, so there are, a fair number of franchises in this space. What is your differentiators?
Yeah, the number one differentiator. So if you called any of these competitors out, most likely they're going to get the structure dry, any of them. The main difference that Bohr is providing is the use of thermal technology, and we're creating heat chambers to dry structures, which allows us to dry them in about half the time, and we're often having to do less demolition of the structure. So it's a much better experience for the client. The insurance companies love us, clients love us, and that is the biggest differentiator from us and a man in a van with a fan, as we like to say.
Got it. So it's a much quicker process, it sounds like. Um, what about like the insurance claims process? Is that something that is very taxing for franchisees, or what does that look like typically?
Yeah, it is a process. Certainly, a lot of what we teach in our training is how to properly document a project, because the better your documentation, the smoother the insurance claim is. And so we know the call it the rules of the game in insurance, and so we'll help them navigate it and get through it. And it sounds taxing, but it's really not. Once you do it a couple times, it's no big deal.
Okay, great, great. In terms of like the ideal operator who would perform best in the system or who would enjoy like running this business, like what does that profile look like?
Yeah, so we have I'll say we have a wide variety of types of people in our group, from software guys, sales guys, engineers, managers, a big, big variety of people. The common denominator is typically somebody wants change for the better, and they want to get out of their corporate rat race. That's a major, major common denominator. But the two things that each one of those different types of people have in common is, one, they're coachable, and two, they're willing to follow a system and make a friend. So if somebody, we don't need somebody to come in and innovate. We have the turnkey model. We learn all the time from our franchises. That's one of the great parts about the franchising model. But we need somebody who's coachable and a team player, and we need somebody who is willing to follow a system and ultimately go shake a hand and make a friend.
Makes
And I
sense.
emphasize willing, because I don't need you to be good at it. I can teach you to be good at it. I just need you to be willing.
So, the term semi-absentee ownership is a bit of a lightning rod within the franchising industry. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Some people say it's possible, some say it's not possible. What is sort of the viewpoint of best option restoration?
It is possible, but here's the plan that we lay out. We like to see our owners involved for 6 months. They don't need to be on every job, pulling drywall and placing equipment and removing carpet and calling clients. They don't have to do all of that, but we like them to be involved for about 6 months in different roles, so they understand their business and can be a better leader of their organization. But then they can slowly start taking a step back. The key is that somebody has to be the face of the company in the local market. That is the key.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's typically what I tell most people. If you're committed like early on and you put in that work to sort of get the structure in place and get everything clicking, then you can take a bit of a step back. You always obviously want to have your pulse on what's going on, but it is possible to get a bit more removed from the day to day. So I
Yeah,
definitely agree with that.
awesome.
Anything else, that I didn't ask about that you'd like to get across?
I'll say we're expanding rapidly, strategically, but pretty rapidly, and we're open in almost all markets across the US.
Awesome.
and we would like more people to come join us in our franchise group if they're the right fit.
Makes sense. Well, appreciate you coming on. It was great just talking about the industry in general and learning more about, I think you called it Boar, if that's the nickname we're
Yeah,
going with
yeah,
now.
that's the nickname. Yeah, good
Nice.
pickup.
Well, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tim.